My name's Mrs. Maroney, and I'm going to be reading tonight's chapter, which is the second half of chapter 1, pages 11 through 17. I hope that you're nice and cozy and ready to read. All right. The Myers' front door opens then, and Danielle steps out. Shoot, 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 Gavin mutters. Apparently, Mrs. Myers came back from her supermarket trip sooner than he expected. She stands in the doorway with Luna, her 2-year-old, on her hip. She waves Luna's hand at Danielle. Danielle calls out, "Adieu, ma chérie, bisous." The 2-year-old waves back. Danielle's taking French this year, and Gavin has to hear this kind of stuff all of the time. Her French is driving him crazy. Danielle skips across the street and stops in front of Gavin and Richard. She looks down at them with a tiny smirk. "What are you two up to?" "Nothing," Gavin says, looking past her. "We're just sitting here." She frowns and then squints. "I'm picking up a funny vibe. What's going on?" She looks at Richard. Richard looks down. Danielle makes a sound of blowing air through her lips. She steps past them, and Gavin hears the door close. He holds his breath to see if he can hear her running up the stairs to her room. Gavin looks over at Richard. "Where was the snow globe before you threw it to me?" "It was on her nightstand," Richard says. Gavin's heart sinks. Shoot, she's going to know it's gone right away. They both sit very quietly, listening. As if on cue, Danielle's voice starts low, then builds up like an ambulance siren. "I don't believe it." Why does Gavin's mother have to pull into the driveway just then? Before she can even get out of the car, the boys hear Danielle coming down the stairs. It sounds as if she's taking them 2 at a time. She comes barreling out of the front door, then leaps off the porch to stand right in front of Richard and Gavin with her hands on her hips. "I don't believe it." "Believe what?" Gavin asks. He keeps swallowing as he widens his eyes to look as innocent as possible. "Yeah, believe what?" Gavin's mom says. She's gotten out of the car and is coming up the walkway toward the 3 of them, a shopping bag in her hand. It's as if Danielle has not even heard their mother. She doesn't take her eyes off Gavin. "Where's my snow globe?" Gavin's mouth falls open with dread. "It was an accident," he finally manages to say. "What happened? And you better tell me the truth." "Danielle, please keep it down," their mother says. Gavin stays silent and looks to his mother for help. "He's always messing with my stuff, Mom. I tell him to stay out of my room, and he goes in it anyway." She turns her angry, pinched face back to Gavin. "What were you doing in my room, bozo? Did you take this clown into my room too?" She tosses her head toward Richard, and Richard leans back. Gavin sees him gulp. "No name-calling, Danielle," their mother says calmly. "Let's go in the house." She turns to Richard. "Richard, I think it's time for you to go home." Danielle immediately protests. "He needs to explain himself first. I know he had something to do with it, and he needs to stay here and explain himself." Gavin looks over at Richard again. He's lost all his toughness. He looks petrified. "Let's get this straightened out in the house." Something in their mother's voice tells them she isn't going to say it again. She sighs. "Come on in, Richard." Once inside, they all stand in the entry hall while Gavin's mom taps gently on his dad's office door. Gavin's dad steps out and looks from one to the other. "What do we have here?" Danielle elbows Gavin hard, and he scrunches her face at him. "Tell him, Gabmeister." "Let's go in the dining room," Gavin's mother said, and she leads the way. When they've all taken a seat, Gavin's dad says, "I can't wait to hear this." Danielle doesn't wait for Gavin to explain. "Dad, I'm all the time telling this guy to stay out of my room, and he totally disrespects my space. And," Gavin's dad turns to Richard, "how do you figure into this?" "Me?" Richard's eyes widen. He turns to Gavin. Gavin looks down and mumbles, "I told Richard that Danielle keeps some candy under her bed, and I asked him if he wanted a piece, and he said yeah. So we went in there just to get one piece, and—" "Did you ask Danielle?" Gavin's father asks. "I couldn't because Danielle was across the street." Gavin looks to Richard, and Richard nods his head. "So you thought it was okay to go in there and take some candy anyway?" Danielle glances from Gavin to Richard and gives them a smile that seems more like a sneer. "I'm really disappointed in you, Gavin. First you set out to do something wrong, and then you involved your company. Richard looks down as if he's an innocent victim of Gavin's as well. But, Dad, it wasn't like that. Anyway, Richard was the one who messed with Danielle's snow globe. He's the one that threw it at me. Richard pipes up with, but I said catch, and you should have caught it. Then it wouldn't have broken. I think we've heard enough, Gavin, his mother says. She turns to Richard. Richard, you may go home now. And I didn't even throw it hard, Richard adds as he gets up and starts for the door, looking very relieved. He doesn't even glance back as he leaves. See, Mom and Dad? See how he's always disrespecting my space? I think he needs to be put on punishment. It's only fair. Gavin looks down at his hands, waiting for the verdict. He listens to the front door close. Now he's on his own. I'm going to think about this, his mother said. There will be a punishment, his father says. You can count on that. Danielle raises her chin in triumph. She smiles at Gavin, one of her snarly smiles. You can be sure we'll come up with something, his father adds, something appropriate. Right now I have things to do, Gavin's mom continues. Your great Aunt Myrtle and Uncle Vester are coming over for dinner tomorrow. Oh no, Gavin thinks. It can't get any worse than Aunt Myrtle and Uncle Vester coming to dinner. He has a feeling his troubles are just beginning. All right, that's the end of the chapter. Tomorrow we'll read chapter 2. The trivia question for tonight is, who is coming over for dinner tomorrow? All right, have a good night. Bye, guys.